Chapter 360. Xiao Xinyu, who taught children, was very different from usual. He was completely different. The gloomy and cold expression that Luo Nan was most familiar with had flown off to God knows where. What Luo Nan saw was a middle-aged kindergarten teacher with a relaxed expression and a smile. His four limbs were on the ground, his body arched as he crawled. His figure was stretched, and his spine swayed. He was like a large lazy cat. A group of 7 or 8-year-old children were imitating him. They meowed happily, and they even developed new skills on their own. They flipped, rolled, pounced, and twisted. It was quite lively. Luo Nan was truly dumbfounded. Shuai Lei felt the need to explain. Cough. This is the cat form that the gym master created specifically for children. You might even be able to see the dog form in the future. It walks the path of the god of imagery. You know, the children in the city are more familiar with these two animals. It's easier for them to refer to. Really? Luo Nan was still a bit absent-minded. Shuai Lei understood what Luo Nan was thinking. He said, the gym master has always been the most amiable to children. Back in the day, when I was in the basic class, it was like the spring breeze and rain. But when I transferred to the specialized class, I was personally taught. Oh my God. He felt nostalgic, and he grimaced in pain. He felt quite complicated. Xiao Xinyu had already seen them, but his reaction was very calm. It was impossible to see any misgivings about his image collapsing. He was still on the ground, leading the children to crawl in circles. They fully stretched their limbs and moved their joints. He even reminded them to control their breathing. The scene could be described as chaotic but orderly. It was under control from beginning to end. Xiao Xinyu practiced in this manner for another round before getting up. He signaled for Luo Nan and Shuai Lei to come over. The children were still dominating the field, playing crazily, practicing. Luo Nan and Shuai Lei carefully circled around the group of overly energetic little fellows and stood next to Xiao Xinyu. Gym Master Xiao's expression had indeed returned to its usual calm state. It was as if the lazy, relaxed, and carefree expression from before were all an illusion. Luo Nan wasn't stupid enough to take the initiative to mention it. He just obediently reported his recent cultivation progress. Xiao Xinyu asked a few details, confirming that Luo Nan's progress was real and effective. He didn't look surprised, just nodding. In the end, he said, "You've finished cultivating in the eye's orifice. Your progress is fast, and your foundation is solid. You should have talent. Continue cultivating along the path of the 9 orifices and 6 roots. There's no need to stick to the order. Try everything. Try everything. You'll only know if you've tried it yourself." Chapter 361. He just so happened to hear Xiao Xinyu's words. He was very surprised. Gym Master, Nanster just opened 1 orifice. If you suddenly teach him so much, he might not be able to digest it. He might not have been able to in the past, but now there's no problem. The cultivation of the 9 orifices and 6 roots is nothing more than a dual cultivation of life and death. He has made progress in the cultivation of his nature arts, but the imbalance is still there. There's nothing wrong with advancing courageously in the aspect of life arts. In layman's terms, nature arts were the cultivation of the mental side, while life arts were the martial arts of the fleshly side. Luo Nan could understand these words, but what did made progress mean? It seemed to have nothing to do with the progress of the eye's orifice. Luo Nan had deep faith in Gym Master Xiao's insight due to his foundation in the art of dividing objects, nature, and mechanism. His thoughts turned, and he unconsciously thought of his special experience at Gear in the early hours of this morning. He was a bit distracted. Suddenly, his mind became alert. Someone was reaching over with a hand. He instinctively slid his shoulder, but it was useless. Gym Master Xiao pressed down on his shoulder and exerted a bit of force, indicating for him to change his posture. Crouching tiger form. Luo Nan hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he obediently knelt on the ground. He stretched his back forward and pressed his elbows. His legs naturally curled up, and he transformed into another big cat, but this time, he was sleeping. This movement was one of the Daoyin techniques he had learned. It was not difficult at all. Plus, after many days of practice, he had already connected with the will of the mind. When he assumed this posture, it naturally resonated with the true meaning of mimicry. He was like a fierce tiger taking a nap in its lair. It was tight yet not tight, loose yet not loose. Amidst the laziness was the tension of a king of beasts. It caused his mind and body to be in a marvelous state of relaxation and tension. Xiao Xinyu squatted down and pressed down lightly on Luo Nan's head. He spoke. Frankly speaking, Luo Nan was unable to hear what Xiao Xinyu said. He just felt that the vibrations of the sound waves did not seem to be transmitted through the air. Instead, they flowed along Xiao Xinyu's palm and seeped into his brain. They were like thunder. The sound of thunder entered his brain, stimulating the apertures of his head and face to vibrate. Then it spread to his entire body. The thunder's vibrations pushed forward layer by layer, causing the body chakra to shake first. The internal links were subdivided, the 9 apertures, the 5 zangs, and the 12 joints all resonated. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind all knew where they were. At this time, Luo Nan was able to clearly distinguish Xiao Xinyu's voice. There were some children on the training field who saw Luo Nan lying on his stomach. They thought that Luo Nan was just like them. They meowed and pounced over. Shuai Lei jumped in fright. He wanted to block Luo Nan, but he was blocked by Xiao Xinyu, who had gotten up. The child didn't know how to control his weight. He directly bumped into Luo Nan's body. Luo Nan was still in a state of subtle comprehension. He didn't move, but his body was soft, smooth, and pliable. It was as if he had no bones. Bumping into him didn't hurt at all. The child rubbed and rubbed, having fun. Quite a few people followed suit. They laughed and laughed as they crowded over. They treated Luo Nan like a large pillow. They pressed and bumped into him without stopping. If Luo Nan continued to comprehend at this time, he would really become an immortal. A low growl came from his throat, and his body stretched out like a sleeping tiger. He stretched his back, and his skin and muscles naturally shook with force. Hidden energy surged out. The children around him fell to the ground, but not a single one was injured. Luo Nan saw the ground full of laughing children, and his childishness was aroused. He rolled on the ground like a cat or a tiger. His 4 limbs stretched out, and his muscles relaxed. He looked vivid and lifelike. The group of children went crazy. They screamed and pounced over when they saw Luo Nan. Xiao Xinyu finally called for them to stop. Luo Nan had been stimulated by an opportune moment. He was instantly enlightened, but his foundation wasn't firm. There was a risk of failure if he continued to play. Xiao Xinyu waited for Luo Nan to stand up before speaking to Shuai Lei. His muscles and tendons have all been nourished. From now on, he can practice fish techniques. Starting tomorrow, you will be training with him. Training with him the moment he comes up. Does he have the time to slowly learn fish techniques? Xiao Xinyu's lips curved into a mocking smile. He's just getting used to his physique and training his reactions. At most, he'll be able to learn a few moves of fish techniques. In any case, his ambition doesn't lie here. Shuai Lei looked at Luo Nan, and Luo Nan scratched his head. The gym master is amazing. From Luo Nan's perspective, the progress of his cultivation was manifested in his fleshly body and in the operation of the body gear. However, it was not easy for him to explain in detail. After all, there were far too many specious things in classical theory. He was just a dabbler in it, and he didn't fully understand many concepts. Most of them were instinctive actions and body memories. Tonight, what truly touched his soul was another set of knowledge that Jim Master Shio had imparted to him. It was the theory of the root receptacle, the root nature, and the root trigger. This set of knowledge was like a clear boundary and outline. It made his mind feel much clearer all of a sudden. It was a bit like, "That's right." Chapter 362. Jim Master Shio's lecture time was not too long. He indicated that he had already taught Luo Nan everything that needed to be taught. The rest was up to Luo Nan to experience. Luo Nan wasn't in a hurry to leave. He and Shuelei sent off the students of Basic Class 5, then went to the backyard to help Jim Master Shio clean up. He continued to pack his luggage, and he only left the Daguan at around 9 o'clock. Luo Nan and Shuelei separated in the underground parking lot of Bosshan Building. They sat in the security car sent by the society. The driver of the car was the same one from last night. His surname seemed to be Chin, but Luo Nan was unclear about his name. Neither of them were talkative people. They merely nodded at each other as a greeting. Luo Nan sat in the front passenger seat. His body leaned against the back of the seat, allowing the car to drive onto the highway. He closed his eyes and muttered to himself. Right now, Luo Nan's heart, liver, and spleen were driving the blood and energy of his entire body to rise and fall. The blood and energy soaked through the tendons, periosteum, muscles, and so on of his entire body. The blood and energy rose to his face. The eye's orifice was like a lamp, and the orifice of his mouth and tongue was like a jade pool. The blood and energy naturally coiled. It was marvelous beyond compare. However, Luo Nan was rarely touched by the various mysterious transformations on his body. At this moment, his mind was filled with the knowledge of the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger. The flashing spiritual light seemed to mix with the dazzling starry sky in the afternoon, sketching out a novel structure before disappearing in the blink of an eye. It was both exciting and frustrating. Stop, stop, stop. Dojo Master Shio had said that this sort of clairvoyance and judgment technique couldn't be done with empty guesses. They had to start from the real thing. The best way was to have a mutual understanding of the inside and the outside. That was to gain insight into oneself, observe others, gradually familiarize oneself, and find an evaluation principle that was most suitable for one's own logic. This sort of way of speaking faintly conformed with the concept of egoism in formatting theory. It suited Luo Nan's taste very well, and he didn't dare to be careless. So Luo Nan decided to dedicate all of his weekend time to seriously practice what he had learned tonight. Because of this, he had to postpone all of his schedule for the next 2 days. The current Luo Nan had a different status in the society. He had an entire security team by his side. If he were to suddenly change his itinerary, he would need to act as soon as possible to avoid inconveniences and accidents. He immediately contacted He Yueyin. There was nothing to hide about this matter. He directly said that he had to rest at home and sort out his recent gains. He Yueyin naturally supported this. He did his best to recall for a few seconds and finally remembered. The night before he truly comprehended formatting theory, Moya really did cover for him. Actually, there wasn't much meaning to it. Just the next day, he was brought home by his aunt. Luo Nan was disinclined to bicker with Moya over these things. Yeah. You said it before. I think it was in the middle of October. What time is it now? Oh, you stood me up because of the music festival. That's right. Moya had practically let go of everything for the sake of participating in the Man City Music Festival. She had been gone for an entire month. Naturally, she had missed out on everything. Moya snorted coldly, haven't I arranged it now? I'll tell you that I'll be back around the 5th. There's a celebratory party on the same day. Don't be nervous. This has nothing to do with you. Naturally, my best friend will arrange it. You can vacate your house first. I haven't been back for almost a month. Luo Nan grumbled. This was the truth. He had been running back and forth between the hospital and his aunt's house since October. His pharmaceutical equipment had probably already turned to dust. He didn't need pharmaceutical experiments right now, but he needed to properly arrange his grandfather's notes, relevant equipment, raw materials, and so on. Oh right. Octopus already had preliminary results. He was anxiously waiting for the contents of his grandfather's notes. He should give Octopus an explanation. Luo Nan pushed the boat along with the current. Okay. I'll find some time to tidy things up. I'll contact you again. No need to smoke. Tomorrow is the weekend. Hurry up and get things done. Luo Nan nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. No way. Oh, so direct. Monday. I'll vacate Monday for you. Monday is the 5th. The 5th is Monday. Are you preparing to have us have a dust removal party? I have very important things to do over the weekend. Luo Nan bit down on the words, very important, and spat them out. He tried to make Mo understand the seriousness of the matter. In terms of practicality, it was indeed very serious. He had just given He Yuan a call. He wanted to cancel all of his travel arrangements for tomorrow. With Secretary He's efficiency, this matter would certainly have already been arranged. Now he wanted to turn around and eat it back. Not to mention his face, how would He Yuan's authority be guaranteed? As for not following the plan and going out by himself, that was even more serious. It was tantamount to trampling He Yuan's newly established rules into the ground. But there was no way to let Mo know about this matter, let alone let her understand. Luo Nan just felt stifled. Mo was silent for a moment. She spoke a few seconds later, very important. A date? Luo Nan groaned, sis, I'm not lying to you. Chapter 363. Luo Nan was a bit startled. He split his attention to look. Finally, he hadn't taken the Universal Commands course for nothing. He was immediately able to discern the meaning of this string of hand gestures. You can use the B time slot from tonight to tomorrow before the shift changes. The B time slot was from 5 to 7:30 in the morning. It was the time between the time Luo Nan woke up and the time before school. During this period, he had his routine morning classes, morning exercises, and breakfast. Chauffeur Chin's meaning was very clear. He was suggesting that he take advantage of this time to settle the matter. In any case, it was their team that was on duty from night to morning. Changing the mission at the last minute was not a big deal. Luo Nan's mind stirred. Tomorrow morning was not an option. His aunt's house was in the Nade district in the east. From there to the River Wu district, he would have to pass through more than half of Xiao City. But now, they had not even left the River Wu district. If they made a sudden turn, they would arrive in at most 10 minutes. Over at Blue Bay Community, the most important things were pharmaceutical equipment, a portable cooler to store raw materials, and his grandfather's notes. They could be taken with them. As for cleaning up, screw her. Luo Nan changed his tone when his thoughts reached this point. How about this, sis? Let's pick up the pace. I happen to be in the River Wu district, so there's no need for tomorrow. I'll go and clear the place now. Get your best friend here to take over. I'll give her an hour. That works too. I'll ask them. Luo Nan's train of thought opened up, and his mind became quite nimble. He continued to revise his plan. It's fine if she doesn't come over tonight. I'll change the security door to a secret key mode. I'll send it to you later. You can be the second passer, and everything will be fine. Very good. Moya gave him a rare compliment. You went to Acumen College. Even though you've been to the hospital a lot, your brain capacity has grown. Is there any explanation here? Scram. Luo Nan hung up the call in a bad mood. He couldn't help feeling a bit awkward. He nodded toward Driver Chin and expressed his thanks. Brother Chin, it's all thanks to you today. Chauffeur Chin smiled and spoke for the first time tonight. Let's go next, Blue Bay Community. It was more or less the same as Luo Nan estimated. The security car only took 10 minutes to drive into the parking lot of Blue Bay Community. Chauffeur Chin abided by his duty as a bodyguard and got out of the car to walk with him. There were not many accidents in the world. At least tonight was normal. 2 minutes later, Luo Nan returned to the small nest he had been away from for over a month. This was the only real estate under his name. It was inherited from his father who had gone missing. The cleaning party that Moya mentioned was actually an exaggeration. It was because this person's words vaguely resonated with Gym Master Xiu's root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger division. The awakened extraordinary power could be understood as the root receptacle. The problem of personality was in the category of the root receptacle. As for taking a different path from Mr. Giant Arm, it was the problem of the root receptacle. That was the principle. According to Gym Master Xiu's teachings, one had to find the corresponding starting point. When he was listening to the lecture, his sense of direction was still very vague. However, after a round of inspiration on the road and the observation of Driver Chin, the situation changed subtly. Luo Nan suppressed the urge to turn around and look for her. He regulated his breathing and let his feverish brain cool down a bit. He first went to the detached garage outside his aunt's main house. This was a more common three-dimensional garage for the middle class in the city. It was divided into 2 levels, and the 2 cars at home were placed separately. When in use, the converter could be activated to change the number of levels, and the car needed could be taken to the exit. The space was relatively narrow, and the function was also simple, so it couldn't be used to store junk. However, at the back of the garage, at the edge of the courtyard, there was a wooden door installed in the lawn. When the door opened, there was a staircase leading to the space at the bottom level. This was an underground storage room. It was said that Moya had hidden it from her family during her Chinibu period. She spent over a year to dig it up by herself. Unfortunately, she had to pay a considerable fine to the community after her secret was leaked. Moya, who was in her Chinibu period, was a standard female hipster. She treated this place as a tree hollow type of private space. Later, as she grew older, she stopped playing this game. She gave this place to Luo Nan, letting him store a few sensitive items. Luo Nan had been home for 4 or 5 years. He had been able to manufacture drugs independently, and he had been able to hide it from his aunt and uncle. This storage room was a great contribution. This was a favor. So he had to lower his head to Moya. Luo Nan placed the box into the secret compartment of the storage room. He turned around and wanted to leave, but his thoughts stirred. He placed the 2 notebooks under his elbows into the secret compartment as well. The reason why Luo Nan didn't place 1 notebook but 2 was because Luo Nan was worried that he wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if he really took the notebooks filled with the imprints of inspiration back to his room. The good work and rest rhythm he had established during this period of time would be utterly destroyed. It wasn't easy to make this decision. Luo Nan looked back 3 times with every step he took. Only when he reached the surface and closed the trapdoor did he let out a long sigh of relief. Chapter 366. Without a doubt, Mo Peng was talking about the amusement plan of the Frost River Reality Cloud City Water Village store. This scoundrel was unable to move the moment he heard about virtual reality games. Not to mention the support of beautiful women. He seemed to be pestering Luo Nan endlessly. Luo Nan really did not have the energy to argue with him. He could only use delaying tactics. The students will all go home on the weekends. Who would go to the large living area to hold a party? Yeah, then next Monday. Hey, are you urging me to skip class? Mo Peng had the heroic feeling of risking his life to accompany Luo Nan on the surface, but he had the wretchedness of shifting the blame to someone else. Luo Nan went directly to the dining room. He used his aunt and uncle as a shield to escape from Mo Peng's pestering. Mo Peng hurried from behind. Next Monday. Next Monday. It's a deal. Luo Nan responded carelessly, but he could not hold back his evil thoughts. If you talk any more nonsense, I'll call Zhang Yingying over and have that sister properly fix you up. They finally made it through breakfast. Mo Peng was someone who could not stay idle. Other than sleeping in on the weekends, he had a rich and colorful life. He was the first to go out. Then his aunt and uncle left one after the other. Of course, his aunt could not avoid giving him instructions. She even set up the operating mode of the AI housekeeper. It made Luo Nan feel that he was infinitely close to being a mama's baby. Who said this? Damn, it was that bastard Mo Peng. Were those two siblings sent by the heavens to torment me? Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He tidied up the bowls and chopsticks, patiently cleaning the dining room and the kitchen. During this time, the so-called native species gene and ecological maintenance business began a new day of docking. Peony led Inc. and met up with Trigate Securities operation team. They began another on-site meeting. Today, their plan was to study the Forest Wall district. Tomorrow, they would study the River Wu district. If everything went smoothly, Luo Nan could slack off for the next 2 days. He could spare some time and energy to ponder and verify his latest findings. I'm finally on the right track. Luo Nan let out a long sigh. He went to the underground storage room next to the garage and retrieved 2 notebooks. Then he went into his bedroom, determined not to come out for a day. Luo Nan sat cross-legged on the bed in his bedroom. He flipped through the pages filled with countless inspirations. He had only taken a few glances when his blood boiled with emotions. It was as if a fire had been lit in a well that was overflowing with oil. It burned with a rumble once more. Luo Nan took a deep breath. He knew that it would be very hard for him to truly sink his heart into contemplation if he didn't control his emotions. However, he had already suppressed it for an entire night. He wished that he could tackle this problem even in his dreams. Suppressing it again was easier said than done. It's better to disperse than to block. Luo Nan muttered a few words, and his mouth cracked open. His surging soul strength was like a flood from a broken dam, flowing in all directions within his blossoming smile. The sky outside the house was clear and bright, but when the image was projected into the heart lake, it instantly turned gloomy and dark. The hazy starry sky unfolded in Luo Nan's heart, covering an area of several dozen square kilometers. The life sketches of the thousands of households in the community and the tens of thousands of living beings were reflected one by one. As the living starry sky appeared, the suppressed heart fire spread throughout the starry sky. Soon, the heat dissipated, leaving only a little life fluctuation that resonated with the stars in the sky. Luo Nan's mind unconsciously became clear and transparent. He was in the clearish state. He was not in a meditative state, but he seemed to be in a meditative state. He sensed the interference and resonance between himself and the lives of others, and a direction of action naturally jumped out. He didn't get tangled up. He took advantage of the situation and the center of the vast star river. The visualization diagram that belonged solely to him naturally appeared. The structure of the tetrahedron, the inscribed sphere, and the outer scribed sphere corresponded with the tens of thousands of life sketches. They converged together. The long river of starlight flowed over the format pyramid. It seemed to completely submerge it, and a clear hierarchy appeared within the format pyramid. It was orderly and not chaotic in the slightest. Ever since that night at Frost River Reality, Luo Nan's format pyramid had already merged with the Star River converged by the life sketches. However, it was also relatively independent. It seemed to act according to its own rules. Only when the domains clashed would the format pyramid's dominance become clear. But this time, the towering and unmoving format pyramid seemed to undergo a subtle change under the radiance of the tens of thousands of stars. There should be a change. Luo Nan spoke to himself in his mind. His way of thinking had undergone a substantial change under the assault of countless rays of light and fire. The format pyramid, the foundation of his body and soul, had to undergo a corresponding change in order to prove that it was real. Luo Nan's telepathic light shone from above, probing the visualization diagram inside and out. What was originally a fuzzy feeling turned into a clear understanding. The format pyramid of the past was a simple combination of geometric figures. It could be considered a conceptual expression. But now, this group of figures had a few more details. Points, lines, and planes were joined together, revealing the conformation of light and shadow and an even more marvelous texture. Chapter 367. The starry sky on the title page was obviously just an illusion, but the changes in the format pyramid were real. Luo Nan couldn't sit still on the bed. He got up and circled around the bed. He had an intense premonition. He had studied formatting theory for over 5 years. Perhaps it was only now that he truly touched upon the threshold of his grandfather's core research. What should I do next? What should I do next? Luo Nan's mind was originally quite clear. He had made preparations for today's closed-door training to tackle difficult problems. But he never expected that his beginning would go so smoothly. It went so smoothly that he lost control. After the format pyramid transformed into a star atlas, all of his previous plans were completely nullified. He needed to sort out a general train of thought based on his new structure. But the true problem was that it wasn't that he had too few ideas. It was that he had too many. He threw himself onto the bed and picked up his split-page notebook. He wrote and drew in a venting manner. Soon, another 6 or 7 blank pages were filled with words, diagrams, and symbols. And there were still endless impulses that tried to jump out from his brain. Luo Nan never thought that he would be stuffed to death by inspiration one day. It was already 11:30 by the time he recovered from his work of memorizing inspiration. The AI butler followed the designed program and made lunch. It invited the only diner in the house to the table. Luo Nan had been evaporating his brain power for the entire morning. His consumption was extraordinary. His instincts began to alarm him. He simply picked up his notebook and went downstairs. He was prepared to continue pondering and writing during his meal. He would not waste time. Luo Nan absent-mindedly ate a few mouthfuls of food, but he wrote and drew half a page of words and symbols. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this. He could even continue doing this at the dining table. Another preset reminder came at this time. It's time for the afternoon class. Sweat it out, young man. The Hexier vibrated. Shui Lei's thick voice was mixed with stifled laughter. It was exceptionally comical. This was a reminder he had recorded a few days ago when he had nothing better to do. It was specifically set up to control his work and rest time. Gym Master Xiu's teachings were intrinsically very rigorous. He paid the most attention to habits and tempo. He believed that good cultivation habits and efficient tempo were the foundation for achieving martial accomplishments. This was especially true after Luo Nan achieved success in the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The demands on his side were even higher. Aside from unavoidable circumstances or extremely special circumstances, Luo Nan's morning classes, evening classes, and afternoon classes were all unshakable. Luo Nan couldn't be lazy. Shui Lei was a good friend, and at the same time, he was the most serious and inflexible supervisor. After over a dozen days of strict control, Luo Nan had already formed an initial cultivation rhythm under the external supervision and internal urging. And because of the true feedback from the internal refinement technique, he would be a bit unaccustomed to messing up his rhythm. Luo Nan looked at his watch and struggled a few times in his mind. In the end, he closed his eyes and pushed his notebook to the side. He sped up his eating speed. The benefits of coming in contact with the mouth and tongue acupoint yesterday were also evident. His digestive tract's ability to decompose water grains and transform essence qi had improved significantly. Luo Nan vaguely felt that what he was eating wasn't a tasteless, nutritious meal. Instead, it was strands of essence energy that seeped into his body. The essence energy endlessly circulated throughout his body as he ate, making up for his lack of energy. The progress is excellent, and the vital energy in the 5 viscera is stable. There's no obvious imbalance. According to Gym Master Shio's words, the root receptacle is thick and the foundation is firm. It's enough to bear. Hiss. Luo Nan suddenly realized something. He nearly stabbed his chopsticks into his nostrils as he subconsciously ate his food. He couldn't care less about his sorry state. His mind spun. The progress of the body gear is under Gym Master Shio's control. Although it's still weaker than the God gear, it's solid with every step. The so-called body is like a mountain, densely planted with thick soil. It's not bad at all. In comparison, the God gear driven by formatting theory is advancing like a hurricane. The growth is out of control, and it's already quite troublesome. If I were to be urged by a flash of inspiration and erupt a second time, would I still want this little life of mine? Luo Nan's back was drenched in sweat when he thought of this. He flipped through his notebook once more, and he immediately crossed out all the radical and bold plans. Then he searched for the relatively conservative plans that advanced step by step and carefully pondered over them. That's right. My root receptacle isn't thick in the research of formatting theory. My root nature is unclear, and my root trigger is advanced. I need to carefully sculpt and solidify my foundation before I make any plans. In this way, the idea of turning sketch into sketch is quite appropriate. Luo Nan slapped the table and made up his mind. He poured the food into his mouth in a few mouthfuls, tidied up a bit, and went upstairs for his afternoon class. Luo Nan performed a round of cultivation. The vital energy of his 5 viscera circulated, and the light trembled of his muscles, skin, and flesh. Luo Nan very naturally captured a moment of calmness. He took advantage of this moment to switch to clairvoyance towards the living starry sky. He began his afternoon research. Compared to the flashes of inspiration and the successive bursts of intensity in the morning, his mind was set in the afternoon. His state of mind was much calmer. He just quietly observed this marvelous and gorgeous starry sky. However, he didn't use the logic of formatting theory. Instead, he used the eyes of a painter. Luo Nan had first pondered over the drawing method of life sketches. It was a time of great danger. The argument was made in haste, and time was tight. He exhausted all of his accumulated knowledge at the time, the out-of-body experience, the pattern and rhythm of soul breathing, the understanding of configuration, the operational structure of energy and information. This included his many years of sketching skills, his experience in drawing thousands upon thousands of sketches, and his keen grasp of a character's characteristics. Luo Nan was able to integrate super complex elements to complete such a magnificent masterpiece. It was enough to be proud of. But from the harshest point of view, there was always a difference in judging standards between a rushed work and a meticulous work. In the end, a life sketch was just a sketch. It was a rough impression captured through the use of sketching techniques. Composition, proportion, structure, and all sorts of details were far from perfect. Needless to say, Luo Nan was still lacking far too much at the time. He didn't have the ability to bear the burden. He didn't have the insight and experience. But now, through learning from Gym Master Xiao, cramming in the basic knowledge of the inner world, and practicing the coupling effects of the God gear and the body gear, Luo Nan patched up one flaw after another. He was like a young painter who had achieved minor success in his craft. Luo Nan turned his head and looked at the draft he first practiced with. It was too horrible to look at, but he knew where the flaws were and how to fix them. The overall order of the living starry sky existed, but the precision of the diagram was lacking. The image was large and impractical. It had already formed a basic mold, but there was practically no room for refinement. If Luo Nan wanted to fix it, he would have to transform the star atlas into the format pyramid and the star atlas into reality. These were his directions. Luo Nan slowly adjusted his breathing. The starry sky pieced together from the life sketches was like a newly completed composition. A draft of the structure was just waiting for him to use the tip of his brush to outline even more exquisite layers of light and shade, to reveal even more crucial details. Chapter 368. Luo Nan decided on a preliminary direction, but he wasn't in a hurry to get started. Just like a qualified painter, Luo Nan would never hastily put his brush to work. What he faced was not a blank piece of paper, but a deep and complex starry sky. He flipped through the split-page notebook in his hand, found a blank page, and wrote solemnly with a pen, "The first rule begins with me. Push yourself to others." Looking at the current situation, the easiest and smoothest choice to correct the life sketch was external clairvoyance. Driver Qin was a good example. At that level, the answer was already laid out before his eyes. But Luo Nan was fully aware that this was not enough. Without the link of self-reference, it would be hard to estimate what kind of flaws would exist in the work. The first version of the life sketch was limited by Luo Nan's level of understanding at the time. It practically lost the space for further refinement. Luo Nan needed to take this as a warning. But it must be known that self-reflection had always been a difficult part of cultivation. It was said that the most important thing was to know oneself. Gym Master Xiao had emphasized this last night with similar words, and Luo Nan had said early on that he wasn't good at self-portraits. These were not words of modesty. Of course, looking at it from another angle, high consumption often represented high returns. Although this method was difficult, it was a process of defining principles and standards. Only by polishing oneself would one be able to reflect external objects more clearly. The essence of the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger subdivision techniques taught by Gym Master Xiao were here. Luo Nan chose a path that was difficult at first, then easy at the end. He needed to climb the steepest peak. Only in this way could he solidify his foundation and avoid the fatal danger of formatting theory's uncontrollable growth. Luo Nan paused for a moment, then wrote another line, "The second rule, observation comes first." Multidimensional reproduction. Luo Nan used his drawing techniques to take a picture of the living starry sky. Whether it was sketching or sketching, neither was a skill that relied on imagination. He needed to have a real object of observation. There was nothing much to say. Luo Nan's object of observation was himself. This was not a simple drawing in a mirror. Instead, he needed to probe the frame of body and soul. He needed to take the form and the soul, and he needed to correspond with the form of the star atlas. Most of the various elements involved the mental plane. Thoughts were chaotic, and it was easier said than done to seek them. Perhaps he could only use the God wheel, body wheel, visualization diagram, root receptacle, root nature, root trigger, and other levels of reference to find the greatest common divisor. This would undoubtedly increase Luo Nan's workload. Chapter 369. The trembling of the chain spread out on the mental plane, continuing without end. But Luo Nan waited and waited, and the familiar dark chains remained hidden in the core of the living starry sky. Fragments of structure flickered faintly, but Luo Nan was unable to see its concrete form. Hiss. It can't be that after the star atlas transformation, all my previous achievements have been reset to zero, right? It was hard for Luo Nan's imagination to run wild when he encountered an unexpected situation. He attempted to enter a deeper level of clairvoyance within the format Pyramid Star Atlas, but just as his thoughts stirred, some structures seemed to melt away in the outermost region of the format pyramid. It's the circumscribed circle. The blurry spherical silhouette representing the heaven and earth format was like an inflating bubble. It rapidly expanded until it reached its limit, and then it shattered. The stars flickered as it transformed into the vaster depths of the starry sky. Luo Nan did not know what this phenomenon represented. At the very least, his frame of body and soul, his God gear, and his body gear did not show any adverse reactions. Before his thoughts settled, another layer of structure melted away. It was the tetrahedron representing the social format. The situation was similar to that of the circumscribed circle. The corresponding stars shifted and spread, silently merging into the living starry sky. The two outer layers of structure peeled away and melted away, forming two waves of dazzling fireworks in the living starry sky. They dazzled the eyes for a moment, but they disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Luo Nan's scalp went numb. If the self-format did this again, his frame of body and soul might not be able to hold on, and his mental defenses might collapse first. What he feared had come. The only remaining spherical star atlas silhouette in the core region was like a deformed heart amidst Luo Nan's turbulent state of mind. It suddenly expanded and contracted along with Luo Nan's breathing and heartbeat. Then it expanded and contracted again. Luo Nan's attention was practically drawn to this peculiar movement pattern after 5 or 6 consecutive rounds of expansion and contraction. But it was only practically. Luo Nan paid attention to the outline of the self-format from beginning to end. He watched helplessly as it expanded and contracted, beginning to expand inconceivably in this pattern. After a few rounds of expansion and contraction, the spherical star atlas had already expanded 3 to 4 times its original size. But its density did not decrease because of the expansion. On the contrary, more and more stars appeared at the very core, gradually forming a dense cluster of stars like a silver sphere. At this point, the format of the tetrahedron, the inscribed circle, and the circumscribed sphere had already become history. Only this brilliant cluster of stars remained. Under the illumination of the heart lantern, the light and shadow of reality interweaved and combined, reflecting a fuzzy figure that gradually grew clearer. And so, Luo Nan saw a majestic black man. His upper body was bare, and he quietly sat cross-legged in a secret room. He was like a statue. His pitch-black skin was covered in a layer of dense beads of sweat, and the distinct lines of his fascia and muscles were trembling. It was clear that he was not as tranquil as he appeared on the surface. Luo Nan recognized this person. He was Black Tiger Bays. He was the vice commander of the Knights of Equity of the Order of Justice of Xiao City. He was an expert with an extraordinarily powerful fleshly talent. During the incident at Frost River Reality, this fellow was a fierce general under An Wang. He was an enemy of Luo Nan's side, and he fought brilliantly against the ears of truth, Fairchild. But in the end, he was used as a sacrifice by An Wang to release the power of the scales of truth. During the sacrifice, the element of chaos was replaced, causing Bays' foundation to be nearly completely destroyed. In the end, Fairchild, who cherished talent, saved him. Fairchild then requested Luo Nan to lend a helping hand, entering the order frame to maintain his livelihood. Bays relied on Luo Nan's order frame to survive. In this sense, Bays was also one of Luo Nan's believers. But Luo Nan did not have the power to control this wild and unruly fellow. He had no interest in ordering him around. Many times, he nearly forgot about Bays. Luo Nan never expected that his subconscious clairvoyance would select this person. With Luo Nan's current eyesight and knowledge, coupled with the close relationship between the two, the heart lantern of the eye's orifice descended upon Bays' most essential location. His muscles and bones were strong, but his internal organs were weak. His vital energy was scattered. His human frame had collapsed. Only by following the order frame bestowed upon him could he survive. Baze was still in the recovery period. Even though Luo Nan had given him the support of the order frame, Luo Nan only understood half of it at the time. There were many areas where the information was fuzzy. The relevant adjustments and adaptations were a large project. Luo Nan could feel Baze's hardships and impatience, but there was even more tenacity and callousness. Perhaps Baze had paid attention to the heart lantern of the eye's orifice for too long, but Baze seemed to sense something. His eyelids trembled slightly, and he immediately opened them. Luo Nan could see that Baze's thick lips were slightly curled up. There was a bit of ridicule in his eyes, but it was unknown which side he was referring to. In the next moment, Baze raised his arms and raised his head. He assumed a strange pious posture, as if he wanted to embrace the holiness of the void. Chapter 370. Oh, this wild and unruly fellow. Luo Nan didn't go so far as to consider himself a god. He wouldn't lose his bearings just because of a few words from Baze. The light of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice pointed directly at Baze's essence. Luo Nan naturally used the division technique he had just learned from Gym Master Show. Yes, there was also the relevant information that Fairchild had told him before he left. Luo Nan had a general judgment of Baze. This fellow pursued power without end. There was only power in his eyes. He didn't care about being restricted at all, especially when it came to the so-called gods, doctrines, and other illusory matters. The root receptacle could be remolded. The root nature could be controlled. The root trigger was appropriate. It seemed like it could be done. What Luo Nan lacked the most right now was observation and verification. His thoughts spun in a circle, and the beam of light from the heart lantern of the eye's orifice dropped down, piercing between Baze's eyebrows. It was at this moment that Luo Nan realized with horror that the sound of chains under the living starry sky grew clearer. The incorporeal and boundless power merged with the beam of light from the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. It ignored the distance between space and itself as it pierced into Baze's body. The interference power of the heart lantern was not worth mentioning in front of a powerful B-rank. However, the marvelous power of distortion it carried was instantly displayed on Baze's body. Baze's reaction was huge. His cheeks contorted, and the muscles of his body violently twitched. Even so, Baze opened his mouth to reveal an ugly and unbridled smile. Bang! The hard bed beneath Baze inexplicably split open. Dust flew everywhere. He stood up and landed on the ground. He staggered a bit, but he still maintained a posture of stretching out his arms and raising his head. He looked more like a fanatic than anyone else. In reality, this fellow was just excited. He only believed in power, power that belonged to him. Baze's foundation had been corroded by the chaos element, and he had been repeatedly tortured by the half-baked rule that Luo Nan had given him. He was at the weakest point of his life. His internal organs, muscles, bones, skin, and flesh were only in shape. His functions were scattered. But under the illumination of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, the marvelous power of distortion of the living starry sky poured in. The power of distortion represented some sort of hidden and powerful rule of order. Baze didn't lack anything. He just lacked a power of order that could integrate the functions of his chaotic body. So he celebrated the internalization of the rule. The rule itself was a set of chains and fences that were difficult to break free from. As long as there was power, anything was possible. To others, this sort of order and rules was a prison, but to Baze, it was the toughest backbone. For a time, it didn't budge no matter how the person in charge of grazing urged it. The heart's lantern illuminated them one by one, and Luo Nan's saw ink let out a coarse squawk. It ignored the restlessness of its own kind and the curses of the residents. It flew up and circled in the night sky. Luo Nan also saw Xie Junping, who was at a certain religious site. He raised his head to look all around, but he was at a loss. There was also another person. Her slender body lay quietly on a sickbed. Her eyelids moved slightly, but she never opened them. Correspondingly, a lone star that had been hidden for a long time streaked across the living starry sky. It circled half a circle before fading away once more. Everything returned to tranquility. Luo Nan looked around, and the glow of the heart's lantern grew brighter. It reflected into his heart, causing Luo Nan to suddenly come to a realization. The living starry sky was warping, but he was actually quite familiar with the order that appeared within the warping. He was even more familiar with it than the multiple explanations of the spatial order of modern physics. He lowered his head to look at the notebook in his hand. There was the classic visualization diagram that he had just drawn. Of course, there was also the title page of his grandfather's notebook, the general outline of formatting theory. The structure of a tetrahedron, inscribed sphere, and circumscribed sphere. If it weren't for this intuitive and concise diagram structure and the corresponding theory as a prerequisite, Luo Nan would probably have been lost within the bizarre laws of the living starry sky. But now he was very clear that the warping of the living starry sky was not some new toy. Instead, it was with him as the core. It was driven by him, warped by him, and divided into levels. The distance of the millions upon millions of life sketches was not calculated based on spatial distance. Instead, it was calculated based on their usefulness to him. They formed many levels, and they could be named student, employee, pilot, clergyman, politician. Yes, the intuitive structure of the star atlas format pyramid had melted away, but it was seamlessly integrated into the structure of the living starry sky. Its rules were no longer like geometric diagrams. After undergoing a high level of generalization, they appeared simple and intuitive. Instead, they were hidden deep within the living starry sky, appearing in an objective and subtle form. Perhaps Luo Nan was just a naive and clumsy student when faced with the boundless and majestic living starry sky, but he had long since obtained a standard answer. Jim Master Shio once said that this sort of refinement of essence into energy required the participation of the mind. In turn, it tempered the mind and increased its level. This was a refining process of soul power. But there were too many things to pay attention to in this course, especially when it was nearing completion. Jade gives birth to amethyst smoke was incessantly burned and refined from day to night. The essence had long since been boiled dry, and one would go berserk. Then what should he burn? Perhaps Luo Nan was affected by the hole in his brain that was the incinerator, but he was more interested in burning and refining. Suddenly, there was a muffled thud. Luo Nan kicked the lower edge of the large bed frame. He didn't care about the pain. He vented all his strength into smacking the bed. Burn and refine the external neuron. The so-called reversal of true energy used the body gear as the lead to drive the God gear. With the addition of interference effects, it could completely consume soul power. And looking at it from this angle, the body gear was like fire. The external neuron, which possessed the hollow depository, did not store soul power. It stored a lake of crude oil. Wouldn't it be possible to find something by setting a fire on it? Hold on. Only now did Luo Nan have the time to hiss in pain. He rubbed his toes. The pain brought him a sense of crisis. He had to admit that this idea was too rash. There were no actual phenomena or data to support it. A single mishap would lead to an unsalvageable situation. He needed to do a few experiments and gather some data before making a decision. After all, the external neuron was not a part of his body. No one knew what would happen if it was burned and refined for an extended period of time. In this way, the production line transformation could not be carried out for a while. It was more practical to pour milk. How could he waste it? Consume it. Luo Nan scratched his head. The pain in his toes had weakened a bit. He sat back on the bed and subconsciously flipped through his notebook. He wanted to find inspiration to solve this problem. But unfortunately, inspiration was a thing. It would always appear when there were too many restrictive conditions. In the end, it was hard for his imagination to solve practical problems. Chapter 373. His fingers paused, revealing 2 pieces of greenish-yellow paper sandwiched between the split pages of the notebook. They looked rough, but strangely glossy. This was a paper talisman given to him by Papercut. It was a top-quality product personally made by the famous psychic of the branch, Mr. Gao. Luo Nan used it to practice his soul strength activation techniques, strengthening the effects of his interference power. Last week at Ocean Sky Cloud City, the paper dolls he made had also made a contribution. Originally, this was a good method of pouring milk. Back then, Luo Nan had relied on this method to consume his excess soul strength and reduce the pressure on his body. But now that Luo Nan had comprehended the technique of coupling, the framework of the God gear and the body gear had taken shape. He no longer had a bottleneck in terms of interference power. He could use a fraction of his strength to achieve 100% of his previous effectiveness. He could stop using up energy. At present, he had not given up on this technique. He would always find time to practice it. Now, there were only 2 pieces of talisman paper left. There were more than 20 little paper men sandwiched between the 2 pieces of talisman paper. Little paper men fluttered in the air with a puff of air. They scattered on the bed and on the floor. But just as they touched the ground, they were like live monkeys. They grabbed the corners of Luo Nan's clothes and cuffs, fighting to be the first to jump back. Some simply climbed all the way to Luo Nan's head and shoulders, treating Luo Nan like a monkey mountain. What paper man? It was clearly a paper monkey. Luo Nan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his shoulders and shook his head, removing the group of paper monkeys. The heart monkey technique that Papercut had imparted to him was still too troublesome. Later on, Luo Nan wanted to learn the equestrian technique from Papercut. It was said that it had the power of armored horses in novels. It could carry heavy loads and soar over land. It could be said to have a miraculous effect. Luo Nan's anxious mood was alleviated quite a bit with this. Previously, he was just depressed by the recurrence of his illness and lost his composure. Now that he thought about it, he had the foundation of the coupling technique and was no longer in a dilemma. So what if his soul power increased again? If opening the eyes orifice wasn't enough, he could open the mouth and tongue orifice. If that didn't work, he could open the ears orifice, life orifice, and death orifice. Wouldn't it be balanced again? Patting his cheeks, he put away the paper monkeys and put them back into the book, taking the opportunity to organize his thoughts. In the end, he sent a message to Papercut through the hex ear. Brother Papercut, do you have a big move for soul force activation? Big move. Papercut was chatting with someone in the tea house outside. Chapter 375. Sister Yuan. Luo Nan grew more and more diffident. This sort of action of biting off more than one could chew would most likely not receive Yuan's support. Papercut added, however, if it involves personal understanding and experience, it would be best to find someone who was present at the time of the lecture. It would be even better to impart the teachings of their hearts. There were only a few B-class experts in the branch, and even fewer in the spiritual type. Old Yu, Horned Demon, Old Gao, Mr. Bai. He read out a string of names. Luo Nan found the names familiar. Aren't these the psychics of Xia City? Old Man Yu was one of the Iron Triangle of Xia City. He was known alongside Ouyang Qin and Her Majesty Empress Wu. The centaur was said to be an adventurous madman with a tendency to self-destruct. He wandered in the wilderness every day, looking for excitement. Old Gao was the creator of the paper talisman in Luo Nan's hand. He was a Daoist with an inheritance, and he was half a disciple of Old Yu. As for Mr. Bai, Luo Nan was even more familiar with him. They had fought side by side before, and Mr. Bai had even given Luo Nan a diagnosis and treatment. His daughter was Bai Xinyan, the mysterious medical doctor with a strange stance. He suddenly discovered that the psychics of Xia City were quite peculiar. Excluding Luo Nan, who was half a psychic, there were a total of 4 psychics. Perhaps the ratio wasn't high when compared to over 1,000 ability users, but all of them were of the architect rank. They were B-rank powerhouses. In the entire Xia City branch, how many powerhouses were there at B-rank or higher? There were a total of 14 people on record, which was already one of the best out of the 88 branches in the world. Among them, shamans accounted for nearly a third of them, which was very impressive. Luo Nan was a bit distracted, and Papercut pulled him back. "I can help you ask Old Gao. It's just that this fellow is a bit unscrupulous. He might try to rip you off." "Sweat, you used to have a large supply of talisman paper, how many of them were taken advantage of?" Luo Nan suddenly felt that he really should find an opportunity to give thanks to the teachers who taught him his skills. Luo Nan didn't want Papercut to return to this matter. He thought for a bit and said, "Maybe we can look for Mr. Bai. The old man seemed to have a good temperament and character. He should be easier to talk to than the profiteer, Mr. Gao." "That's right, you've been treated by White Salt for such a long time, so it can be considered a bit of fate. He'll definitely pay attention to you, just don't take the initiative to mention it." "I know." Luo Nan understood tacitly. It wasn't news that the father and daughter of the Bai family didn't get along. "Wait, why does it sound like you want me to find someone?" Luo Nan opened his mouth, but he was speechless. It was his own business, so of course he had to do it himself. However, with his otaku personality, he would feel great pressure even if he took the initiative to contact someone, let alone ask for help. After all, Mr. White was still his senior, and he wasn't that familiar with him. In any case, Luo Nan could no longer let Papercut do this for him. He could only grit his teeth and agree. It was also at this moment that he suddenly thought of something. If every time he went into seclusion to cultivate, he would have to lose control and spend a lot of energy to clean up after himself. Would it be worth it? Mrs. Luo Shuqing was a bit baffled during breakfast the next morning. She kept feeling that something was off with Luo Nan. In the end, he couldn't help but ask, "What are you so conflicted about?" "Oh." Luo Nan tightly stuffed a large amount of meat into his mouth. When he raised his head, he had an innocent expression on his face. "Your eyebrows are all knotted, and you still say you're not conflicted." Luo Nan swallowed the slice of meat with great difficulty. He continued to play dumb. "Are you conflicted?" "Oh, my forehead is fighting with the marginal lobes." In the end, Mrs. Luo Shuqing's attainments in psychology were decent. She went around in circles and finally understood. In psychology, the prefrontal cortex represented rationality and self-control, while the marginal lobes represented impulsive emotions. It could also be understood as the struggle between long-term benefits and short-term benefits. Luo Nan was just speaking carelessly, and he shivered. However, his words did contain some true emotions. He didn't go looking for Mr. Bai last night. The reason was that he wasn't familiar with Mr. Bai. It was too late, and he was afraid of disturbing Mr. Bai's rest. To put it bluntly, his otaku cancer flared up. He displayed a fear of interpersonal relationships. He dragged it out as long as he could. He knew how to kill someone he was familiar with, and in the end, he went looking for Secretary He. He learned that the branch's database did indeed have a recording of the high-level seminar back then. However, Luo Nan wasn't able to get his hands on it. He Yuan warned him very bluntly not to bite off more than he could chew. The B-rank technique, heart incineration blade, involved too many elements. Many of them were knowledge unique to architects. Without a solid foundation, forcefully practicing was no good. Essentially speaking, Luo Nan hadn't even reached the standard of an awaken due to the imbalance between his body and soul. This was a problem with the standard. It wouldn't change just because his combat strength was superb. A missile that could explode at any time was indeed more frightening and destructive than a refined rifle. However, the control power needed to be looked at the other way around. Last night, Luo Nan even asked how to pour the milk. Oh no, he asked how to use his ultimate move. In the end, Yuan saw through his worsening condition of the imbalance between his body and soul. Only after tossing and turning for a while did he avoid the pain of inspection. He didn't get any results in his training that night. It was hard for Luo Nan to avoid feeling emotional. However, he had forgotten that his aunt had been paranoid these past 2 days. She was worried that Luo Nan had stepped into some domain. Luo Shuqing immediately became nervous when he heard his vague and suggestive words, "Did that firm come to recruit you again?" Luo Nan slapped himself in the face in his mind and cursed his foul mouth. He rushed to ease Luo Shuqing's mind. "Nope. I haven't contacted them for the past 2 days. They were just speaking carelessly." It would have been better if he didn't explain. The more he explained, the more Luo Shuqing became suspicious. She put down her bowl and chopsticks, wanting to understand the situation in depth. At this time, Mo Haiheng, who was swiping at the table and reading the newspaper, suddenly jumped out with a sentence, "Actually, if there's no danger, you can give it a try. Young people are just trial and error. Only by making mistakes can you gather effective information." He brought out the trial and error theory again, and this time he took it a step further. "You can go to their firm and try it out. See if it suits your heart. If you want to do it, then draft up a contract and bring it back for your aunt to help examine it. You're in high school now. Financial independence can be put on the agenda." Luo Shuqing turned to glare angrily at her husband, but she soon understood something. She furrowed her brows in silence. There was one more person who was at a loss. They clearly wanted to get to the bottom of things. Luo Nan knew long ago that his aunt and uncle were worried about the direction of the so-called trial and error theory. He could see through them with a single glance. He couldn't help but feel even more depressed. He groaned in his mind, "It's all a misunderstanding." He began to ponder whether or not he should ask Zhang Yingying for help. She should set up a trap and play a two-man show to calm the hearts of these two elders. Breakfast ended hastily amidst the confusion and probing. Today was Sunday, November 4, 2096. The accidental injury in the morning seemed to have given a bad start to the day's schedule. Luo Nan's aunt and uncle, as well as Mo Yen, went out to do their own things after breakfast. Luo Nan continued to stay at home, carelessly observing the star atlas of the Format Pyramid. He was intimidated by the continuously increasing water level of the vast ocean of icebergs. He dejectedly withdrew from the fixed space, holding his head in distress. He couldn't delve any deeper into the homework related to formatting theory before he found a suitable channel to pour milk. Chapter 376. It had to be said that Luo Nan's mood was quite high right now. Most of his thoughts last night were on the heart-searing blade, the legendary secret technique of pouring milk. He only skimmed a few glances at the C-rank technique, the dripping sword. He did not sink his heart into it. He only knew that this technique mainly condensed water vapor out of thin air to attack the enemy's weak points. It was a bit like the magicians in fantasy novels, but the sound and light effects were inferior. Right now, Luo Nan wanted to go deep into contact with this technique. He first looked at the original recording on Annex 2 of Headquarters RT-8313 mission. Speaking up to this point, he actually wanted to look at Annex 3 yesterday, but he did not have the authority to read it. He could only look at the summary and the like. Only ability users at the architect rank or above could see the full picture. How infuriating. Luo Nan grinned as he waited for the network to buffer. The demonstration recording on the Annex used the reality level of video and audio storage specifications. Its volume was enormous. Even with the special network form of the Heir, a period of time was needed for smooth playback. The volume specification corresponded with its value. After all, this was a teaching demonstration for all ability users in the world, and it was done by Her Majesty Empress Wu herself. According to the suggestion of the Heir's AI assistant, Luo Nan chose the reality mode with the best results. This was the function of the simulator on the 4th level of the psychic wave network. Right now, Luo Nan had already solved the problem of interference power. He could use the related functions without any pressure. He closed his eyes. After the darkness naturally descended, gentle light slowly seeped in. The light gradually deepened and changed. In the end, it formed a scene of interweaving gray and dark red. There were also intersecting noises, wind pressure, the choking smell of the earth, and even the dry sensation of his skin entering at the same time. He was instantly brought to the vast and spacious wilderness. Luo Nan was already used to such simulation guidance. He just felt that the simulator of the psychic wave network was a bit more exquisite than the burner version of Frost River reality. Right now, he was at the entry level of the 9 orifices and 6 roots technique. The stimulation of these nerve cells caused his internal organs, fascia, skin, and flesh to react instinctively. He needed to give himself another hint to make up for the disparity in perception between his mind and fleshly body. Luo Nan raised his head to look into the distance. Right now, he was at the top of a hill. This was the highest point relative to the surrounding environment. The dark red earth beneath their feet was cracked layer by layer, extending endlessly towards the horizon. This was, without a doubt, the wilderness. In the next second, Luo Nan's attention was involuntarily drawn by the bright, sharp, and valiant slender figure in front of him. He suddenly realized who was the main character in this world. Her Majesty Martial Empress. For the time being, only the silhouette of Her Majesty Empress Wu could be seen. She was wearing a tailored hunting suit that was tight at the waist. It was dark red in color and paired with brown boots, which highlighted her long legs and matched her slender figure. What was more eye-catching was the lightweight electromagnetic rifle slung across her shoulder. The body of the rifle was cut off by a simple and low-profile ponytail, but it still reminded everyone that this was a dangerous wasteland. This outfit was similar to the color of the wasteland and could also serve as camouflage. It looked more professional, but it also had a wonderful sense of fashion, forming a very wonderful balance. Well, any man would find similar reasons when facing a stunning beauty. To Her Majesty Empress Wu, that rifle was no different from a bag in a fashionable woman's hand. They were both plastic arts. Luo Nan's imagination ran wild as he tried to move about in reality. The enormous video and audio storage format of reality should have left enough space for interaction. But Her Majesty Empress Wu's image did not respond. Could it be that there were no relevant interaction resources stored? Just as Luo Nan's thoughts spun, Her Majesty Empress Wu suddenly turned around. Her gorgeous, bright, and beautiful face appeared without reservation. It was within Luo Nan's breathing range. Luo Nan actually took a step back. Of course Luo Nan recognized Her Majesty Empress Wu. Though he had never formally met her, Bamboo Pole's notes on the most important people of the world course had photos, videos, and other video materials. Especially for a stunning beauty like Her Majesty Empress Wu. All kinds of materials were even more complete. Luo Nan's impression of Her Majesty Empress Wu was, of course, extremely beautiful. She especially loved to smile. In all kinds of video materials, Her Majesty Empress Wu always revealed a reserved, unrestrained, cordial, mocking, or fierce smile. Her smile infused the already bright and gorgeous image with an even more vivid color. Luo Nan only believed that bamboo pole had specially chosen materials during the class. Only later did he find out that Her Majesty Empress Wu had left behind all the video materials ever since she became famous. Whether it was photos or videos, she had never left behind any expressionless moments. Luo Nan felt that it was interesting at first, but it made his hair stand on end when he thought about it. Cough, these were bamboo pole's original words. At the time, bamboo pole spoke as a footnote to Her Majesty Empress Wu's temperamental personality. It left an incomparably deep impression on Luo Nan. Her Majesty Empress Wu in the reality recording was obviously smiling. It was the kind of professional smile that made her seem like a competent host. Oh, no. She was more like a tour guide. In fact, this was a reality experience of travel and adventure. With the support of reality technology, those bold characters could completely greet Her Majesty Empress Wu before them. They could shake hands. They could even say a few flowery words. There shouldn't be any problems. However, Luo Nan shrunk back. He shrunk back in great embarrassment. The beautiful face that was so close at hand gave him a tremendous pressure. Was it an incurable outbreak of otaku cancer? Luo Nan was willing to believe that it was bamboo pole's explanation that day that left a shadow in his heart. It was needless to say that Her Majesty Empress Wu was famous for her beauty in her early years. Her appearance could be said to be ostentatiously beautiful. Her facial features were completely flawless, but there was always something out of line between her brows and eyes. Bamboo pole, who had seen countless beauties, had this to say: this so-called out of line was actually a kind of oppressive force. People could feel an unquestionable dominant force from Her Majesty Empress Wu's smile from time to time. She was charming, and you would be infatuated. She was gentle, and you would be satisfied. She was fierce, and you would tremble. She was callous, and you would be fearful. Any high-level intelligent life form had a relatively clear self-awareness. Their thinking instinctively revolved around themselves. No one wanted to become someone else's prey. But Her Majesty Empress Wu's out-of-line beauty, supported by her boldness, transformed into a sharp weapon that pointed at the weakest part of the human heart. Perhaps Luo Nan was scaring himself. Right now, Luo Nan had a trembling feeling of facing a sharp blade. He only relaxed a bit when he pulled some distance away. Such a reaction hurt Luo Nan's self-esteem. What the hell? If I'm like this when I see a virtual image, won't I immediately kneel when I see the real person? He slapped his cheeks. A wave of rebellious psychology, a common trait at his age, stirred restlessly. He really wanted to use his interactive function to do something, to retaliate. The virtual screen clearly showed that when the pleated skin wild boar charged, translucent water droplets condensed in midair and pierced through the pupils, causing the fragile eyeballs to explode, but that was all. Her Majesty Empress Wu also said, "I just unleashed a dripping sword, but the effect wasn't too good. The reason why I'm doing this is to show everyone one thing: in practical applications, you shouldn't overestimate its lethality. After all, this is only an awakened level technique. If you don't use it properly, it will make the situation worse." It sounded very reasonable, but was it really not because of a mistake? Luo Nan had yet to walk out from the shadow of losing face. He couldn't help harboring a subtle thought and made malicious guesses. But in the next second, the other eyeball of the pleated wild boar, which was still 20 meters away, exploded. The situation seemed to be similar to last time. The pleated wild boar roared once more, but its roar was cut off halfway. Its thick and sturdy body lost its balance. It simply fell to the ground and slid forward. It lost all kinetic energy when it was around 5 meters away from Her Majesty Empress Wu. All that was left was the instinctive twitching of its limbs. Luo Nan gaped. This time he really didn't understand where the problem lay. At this time, Her Majesty Empress Wu took 2 steps forward. She was like a field researcher. She knelt on one knee next to the pleated wild boar, allowing the dry red earth to stick to her hunting clothes. Then, her slender fingers swiped through the air, and the head of the pleated wild boar that was as hard as iron was cut apart. It was only this inhuman action that made people remember her identity as an extraordinary. Oh, she wasn't one 3 years ago. Luo Nan didn't know how many times he had been stumped by this train of thought. The dissection scene was very bloody, but it helped to restore the truth. It was as if Luo Nan was at the scene. He took 2 steps forward and saw that the brain of the pleated wild boar had completely turned into a paste. Forget a wild boar, even a giant elephant would be cleanly wiped out by this kind of damage. But why was the effect so different between the 2 times? Could it be that she was cheating? Luo Nan sank into malicious conjectures, finding it hard to extricate himself. On the other side, Her Majesty Empress Wu had already given the answer. In terms of destructive power, this is the effect of the water droplet impact, which is enhanced by both sharpening and exploding. And in order to control it to penetrate the eye and enter the brain, there is also the enhancement of guidance. Her Majesty Empress Wu smiled as she explained the key points of this attack technique. As mentioned before, the dripping sword was called a sword, but it was actually an attack technique that interfered with the material plane of the mind. The principle was to use soul strength to form a special circuit, to fully do work, to absorb the water molecules in the atmosphere, to achieve a series of blessings such as sharpening, exploding, amplification, acceleration, guidance, and so on. It was a technique that killed the enemy in an instant. The core circuit structure of the dripping sword technique was known as the condensation ring. Only through this structure could water molecules be rapidly gathered. And on this basis, various effects such as sharpening, amplification, exploding, and so on could be realized. For this reason, soul strength needed to be close to the material plane. It was sculpted and shaped. It didn't matter if it was rough, and it didn't matter if it couldn't be maintained for a long time. The key point was the suddenness and explosive power of the instantaneous shape. It's not easy to absorb water from thin air, and it will delay the battle. Therefore, the most ideal way to use it is through the enemy's eyes, mouth, and other places that are more moist. It is possible to compress the gathering time as much as possible, using food to feed the enemy, to achieve an instantaneous effect. Her Majesty Empress Wu's attitude was candid. She didn't hide the shortcomings of this technique when it was used in actual combat. I'll repeat once more. Pure beads of water have no lethality. It must possess the 5 blessings of sharpening, amplification, acceleration, explosion, and guidance. Only then will it be meaningful. And these 6 structures are all independent. Aside from the condensation ring being the core step, the other effects will need to be increased or decreased according to specific circumstances. For this reason, one must maintain a high degree of calmness and clear-headedness in actual combat when using this technique. Unfortunately, quite a few people aren't able to do this. It has nothing to do with talent. It's just a matter of character. Wasn't character also a part of talent? Luo Nan really wanted to use the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger division technique he just learned to fight against Her Majesty Empress Wu. Unfortunately, this was meaningless. Her Majesty Empress Wu explained the 6 structural circuits one by one, including the condensation ring. She combined this with the magnified model on the virtual screen and a live demonstration. She explained the profound in simple terms and was very clear and easy to understand. The clarity of the reality level combined with the powerful playback function of the Heir created an astonishing effect. Aside from theory, Her Majesty Empress Wu condensed the structural circuits in a casual manner. Even if she deliberately made them visible for the sake of demonstration, the fluctuations and changes of soul strength could still be sensed by others. This was not easy at all. No wonder the volume of the video file was enormous. How many resources would be consumed to reproduce such details? And there was certainly the specialized technology of the inner world inside. Her Majesty Empress Wu, who was in the reality realm, took the opportunity to sell her personal goods. The current application techniques of the mental side are the art of structure. Ability users fully utilize the plasticity of soul strength to form functional structures with interference power. Then they can influence and control more effective material components to realize the extraordinary effect of the mind distorting reality. Luo Nan nodded over and over as he listened. He thought of the wraith sign. The human-faced arachnids' offensive methods were often realized through complex and special structures. It was just that this fellow had no material foundation at all. It could only create shadows on the mental plane. There was also the configuration that Jack spoke of. It was the operational structure of energy and information. It manifested itself extremely clearly on the body of a burner. Her Majesty Empress Wu even mentioned the high-end application standards of the dripping sword on the topic of the art of structure. According to her, it was not difficult to make the water droplet explode. What was difficult was to condense it into a pellet, to be as sharp as a blade, to strike a vital point without injuring oneself. However, the sculpting and shaping of the condensation ring needed to be extremely precise in order to realize this point. The structure was stable, and it consumed too much mental energy. It was not economical enough, so there was no need to criticize her for seeking perfection. The consumption was too great. It was not economical enough. Luo Nan was very sensitive to consumption right now. His ears immediately perked up. Could it be that this small water droplet, which appeared and exploded in an instant, could consume a large amount of soul strength? His interest rose by several levels in an instant. Unfortunately, Her Majesty Empress Wu did not demonstrate this so-called high-end technique. This caused Luo Nan's malicious conjecture to erupt once more. Could it be that you couldn't do it back then? The video ended, but Luo Nan was still unsatisfied. He had yet to look at the lecture notes that Papercut sent over. Just by starting with Her Majesty Empress Wu's explanation, Luo Nan already had his own understanding. Control, precision and improvisation were the core of the dripping sword technique, but the most basic thing was still precision. The basic requirement was to sculpt the relevant structure on the millimeter scale. A rough mold would be ineffective. Precision was the best. Luo Nan was a precision-oriented mentally enhanced user. His mental senses were first-rate acuity, and he had a basic understanding of configurations. He had an enormous advantage in this aspect. Papercut was right. This technique seemed to have been specially prepared for him. Oh, that's right. He could also be considered an artist. It could gather water molecules on its own and then break apart. Luo Nan only cared about the next one and continued to make adjustments. He did it every 3 to 5 seconds. He did it 20 times in a minute. Soon, he became familiar with the structure of the condensation ring. He could compress the majority of the condensation ring's shape to 2 to 3 seconds. He did it 30 times in a minute. 30 repetitions in a minute, and most of them were substandard products. It was hard to be effective. Was it boring? Was it frustrating? Perhaps some people felt that it was boring and frustrating, but Luo Nan didn't think so. Everything depended on the details. When he learned to sketch and sketch, he relied on large amounts of practice to slowly grind them out. When he sketched the outline, it seemed as if he was drawing lines that were all the same. It was repetitive and tedious, but in reality, his hand could clearly sense whether it was stiff or soft, rough or exquisite. A person's aesthetic sense could be accurately grasped, and the corresponding sense of accomplishment would inevitably follow. Yes, only when one's thinking was exquisite could one touch upon a more subtle level. One could capture a little change, a little progress, and the sense of accomplishment. It was as Her Majesty Empress Wu had said. The dripping sword technique was a kind of structural art. A slight transformation was a kind of plastic art. Luo Nan's perception and aesthetic sense could be judged. Therefore, Luo Nan could borrow his previous successful experience to know what sort of standard he needed to reach. He was mentally prepared for the dry and tedious practice in the early stages. The distance wasn't too far. His progress could be seen. Why not complete it in a spurt of energy? Luo Nan really did treat it as a painting. He followed the routine from back in the day. After a short period of brainless practice, he no longer casually used his thoughts to shape. Instead, he used his brain. He compared it with Her Majesty Empress Wu's example, carefully imitating and correcting it. He first slowed down. After gaining some understanding, he began to speed up. Then he slowed down again. Then he sped up again. In the end, he sped up all the way. Luo Nan forgot how many times he practiced. In the beginning, he recorded it through the hexier, but how could he care about it later on? Around 2 hours passed, and it was almost time for lunch. Luo Nan's mind suddenly lit up. The brush and carving knife of his soul strength were extraordinarily smooth and quick. He practically couldn't feel the process of carving. A strand of thought was like a seal. It firmly pressed down, and the condensation ring was engraved on the boundary between the mental and material planes. When he was distracted and lost control of his mind, the structure of the water droplets became chaotic and exploded, turning into a thick mist. That was about it. Luo Nan shook his head and sighed. He roughly tidied himself up, lifted his blanket, and went to the balcony. Just as he took 2 steps forward, a glint of water flashed in the corner of his eyes. It was a water droplet that had just formed. Oh, this of time of time. Luo Nan hugged the blanket and stared at the beads of water. He was sure that all the water droplets had exploded, and it was definitely true. Perhaps it was because Luo Nan's feeling was on point, but the final structure of the condensation ring that Luo Nan sculpted was the most perfect in terms of shape. Its precision reached a certain standard. After a period of turbulence, the water that had gathered completely dispersed, but the basic structure of the condensation ring did not explode like other rings of the same kind. Instead, it tenaciously preserved itself. Of time. Luo Nan's attention was temporarily focused on this bead of water. Not much of the consumption. Strands. Endless. Perhaps for other mentally enhanced users, long periods of time would be a bit of pressure. But Luo Nan's soul strength was affected by the high output of the format pyramid production line. Every second of progress was several times that of this kind of consumption. It didn't hurt nor itch. If this was called consumption, then the whole world was in an economic crisis. Luo Nan grinned. Since it involved the relevant situation, he instinctively used introspection to look at the state of his god gear. Just as he cut into the past, his thoughts suddenly froze on the spot. Dropped? It was completely different from what he imagined. The water level of the vast ocean of icebergs, which was already overflowing, had actually dropped by a chunk for some unknown reason. It was even lower than yesterday's normal state. With such an astonishing drop, it was no wonder that he felt a sense of exhaustion. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. This didn't make sense. The consumption of the condensation ring needed to be multiplied by 1,000 to 10,000 times in order to achieve this sort of effect. Luo Nan subconsciously hugged the quilt to his chest. The slight moisture on it reminded him of something. The room had just been sprinkled with water mist. He thought about it. A single condensation ring obviously didn't consume much. But if several hundred condensation rings existed at the same time, then several thousand would be produced in succession, and the process would continue without end. This consumption could no longer be ignored. It was common knowledge that multiple missions consumed a lot of resources. It was possible for this kind of consumption to exceed the output of the format pyramid production line for a period of time. This meant that every awakened had posted at least 5 times in the discussion area. Even though this was the accumulation of 3 years, there were certainly quite a few quarreling and spiteful messages within. But from the perspective of the inner world, this was truly a national event. The influence of the world subjugation event could be seen at a glance. The messages in the reply area were arranged in reverse order by default. The newest message was at the very top. It was from 10 minutes ago, and the content was, "A daily kneel." Luo Nan traced back an hour. There were 2 more messages, indicating that the popularity of the discussion did not decrease. They were still in the godly posts. Luo Nan wanted to understand the atmosphere at the time, so he switched the replies to the proper order. He started from the beginning and skimmed through 3 to 5 pages. Most of the messages were, "Is this real or fake? What a beauty, she's my type. Beware of soul fingerprint collection traps. First-time measurement data, and other hipster messages." Of course, there were also, "The current Wuzitian. She must be a hype," and other idiotic messages that were brutally whipped into corpses. It was very clear that Her Majesty Empress Wu of 3 years ago was not a particularly outstanding character in the world. She did not possess global fame. But it was precisely after this incident that she truly soared to the heavens. She added more and more legendary colors to the world subjugation event. Luo Nan more or less admired her. Even though he felt that the martial emperor's secret technique was not as marvelous as it was described in practice, the influence was real. And Her Majesty Empress Wu was capable of shouldering this responsibility. Luo Nan skimmed through a few pages, wanting to change his method. Just thinking about the 360,000 pages was enough to make him collapse. If he really were to read page by page, he would not be able to do anything for the next 10 days to half a month. He used the Heir's intelligent filtering function to eliminate the boring messages. He only looked at the essential replies. Just like this, there were still over 200 pages left. Many of them were tests of the dripping sword. Some were single columns of data. Some were experimental demonstrations. There were also extremely cruel combat scenes. These were the responses of several tens of thousands of ability users from all over the world toward this technique. However, these dry goods weren't the most popular of the essential posts. It was the era of national entertainment. There were always some funny and amusing messages that grabbed the most eyeballs. Luo Nan saw a string of hilarious scenes of practicing and using the dripping sword. There were all sorts of absurd incidents and all sorts of amusing suicides. The high difficulty of using the dripping sword fueled the vitality of these videos. Luo Nan saw a certain eccentric person use his own mouth to quickly condense water droplets. The result was a tragic explosion. Luo Nan could not refrain from giggling foolishly on the dining table. He watched a string of videos and nearly missed his afternoon class. When he returned to his bedroom to do his afternoon class, he shot a glance at the balcony. He saw the slightly swaying quilt over there. His mind suddenly stirred and he walked straight over. Today's weather was cloudy. Sunlight came and went. The effect of drying the quilt was quite average. The color of the quilt was light and there weren't any decorative designs on it. There were faint halos left on it, just enough to form half a fuzzy human silhouette. Luo Nan used the Heir's visual camera function to take a picture of the quilt. Of course, he also allowed the water droplets floating in midair to enter the frame. He created the title, "A Morning of Practice in Exchange for Rain." He then posted it to the comments section. This was sharing, right? Luo Nan himself was unclear about the subtle thoughts of a youth. But his mind was still clear. He used anonymous mode. He only showed the location of his registration, which was the Xia City branch. Of course, he also showed the time of his registration. One look and Luo Nan could tell that he was a noob. This newest message soon appeared at the very top of the page. Luo Nan refreshed it twice, but there was no response for the time being. He was happy and went to do his afternoon class. It was already past 1 o'clock in the afternoon by the time he combed through the vital energy of the liver, heart, and spleen. Luo Nan was used to single-mindedly concentrating on cultivation. His mind was filled with similar elements. He had nearly forgotten about small matters like uploading photos. He shifted his attention to the water droplet that still existed. Through his mental senses, he knew that the condensation ring at its core was still stable. Perhaps as long as the supply of his soul strength didn't stop, this thing could continue to exist. The condensation ring was undoubtedly a very good carrier. Luo Nan attempted to use it to further grasp the 5 auxiliary structures of sharpening, amplification, acceleration, and so on. He was just about to replay the reality recording to learn the relevant knowledge when he suddenly recalled an essential reply he had seen during lunch. The starting point of the respondent was that he was dissatisfied with his firing speed in combat. He suspected that Her Majesty Empress Wu was cheating. The respondent started from the beginning of the video, analyzing the authenticity of the reality recording frame by frame. Though he had serious doubts about the authenticity of the recording, the angle was more practical. He used various analysis techniques. He even captured and analyzed the soul strength fluctuations produced by Her Majesty Empress Wu in combat twice. The data was extremely detailed. This would be an excellent starting point if he wanted to replay it. This reply was very long. It was enough to start a series of posts. In fact, this was a link to a hot forum post. The number of replies it drew in was quite large. These replies were distributed in various hot spots in the thread. If the reader was interested, they could see a long string of replies with a light touch of telepathy. Of course, they could also choose to use bullet screen mode, but that was too messy. Luo Nan didn't like it. Anyone who read the thread would inevitably be affected by the hot spots. Luo Nan paid more attention to the ones with a large number of replies. He originally wanted to lock onto the latter half of the lecture, but he stopped midway. He saw a hot spot with over 10,000 replies. What attracted his attention was a scene that left a deep impression on him. It was the moment when Her Majesty Empress Wu suddenly turned her back to the viewer not long after the video started. The poster complained, "I actually took a step back when I saw a beauty. This isn't logical. That's why I became suspicious." The replies instantly went off the mark. Aha! I'm relieved to see the poster take a step back. I really regret it at the time. Step back +1. Regret +1. Step back +1. Regret +10086. Am I the only one to throw myself at her? Raise your hand if you throw yourself at her. Does throwing yourself at her count? You don't even give me a second glance, do you? The poster has already analyzed it below. Everyone is retreating here. The video has a fixed program buried in it. It's to keep you bunch of perverts at a distance. So it was like this. Luo Nan came to a sudden realization when he saw this. So he wasn't the only one who suffered and lost face. This was the common experience of all the participants. The irresistible elements within made up for the young man's wounded heart. But then Luo Nan was confused. The pressure that pierced the weak points of his heart and the fear he felt were also the effects of the program. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.